Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the Security Investors Conference 2021. The first session of the day is a keynote address by a very special speaker, and the title of the keynote is Security 2025, a post-COVID outlook. So, to give the keynote, we have with us Dr. Chenxi Wang, founder and managing general partner of Rain Capital, a VC firm focused on cybersecurity ventures. Dr. Wang is a longtime thought leader, executive, and a woman in tech advocate. She is the former vice president research of Forrester and a former professor of the Carnegie Mellon University. May I please request Dr. Wang to come to the stage? Welcome, Dr.
Hello,
Wang.
how is everyone?
We're all good, Dr. Wang. You please go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here tonight. Um, I don't know how many of you have read my bio. I am the founder and general partner of Rain Capital. We are a Silicon Valley-based venture fund focusing on cybersecurity investments, early stage cybersecurity startups. And I've been doing investment for a while now, and we've built up a very nice portfolio of cybersecurity companies, and very happy to be here and talk about the cybersecurity industry trends as well as investments. So since the discussion today is about security post-COVID, and I know that last year and even this year still, many of our lives were turned upside down by the global pandemic. Same as me, I've been in lockdown actually since March 2020, and only recently we started actually venturing out and doing things. So it's been more than a year of remote work, more than a year of locking down and not being able to see folks and collaborating, but business didn't stop. In fact, last year, security investments have gone up. I think the level of investments have gone up 30 to 40% comparing to 2019. And that is because throughout last year, remote working became a predominant method of telecommunication and working throughout the world. So we have a lot of infrastructure spending on supporting everyone working outside the office, be that giving laptops, be that increasing cloud deployments, cloud spending, or doing VPNs or zero trust infrastructure. And these all includes increased security spending. In fact, I think 451 Research recently had a survey which said throughout 2020, security investments have gone up between 8% and 25% for different enterprise. And that is interesting to me because as an investor, in March and April, it was extremely frustrating because we saw a lot of projects putting on hold and a lot of security budget went away to support remote working. And we didn't know what was going to be like for later part of the year. But May, June, things started slowly coming back. And by July, August, September, we've seen an increased level of activity and security spending. And by the end of the year, in fact, most of my companies have outperformed their pre-COVID goals, which is very exciting and very gratifying. So I want to talk a little bit about what are the prominent trends that we're seeing in investment. First of all, as everyone know, that remote work is here to stay, even post-COVID. In the US, I don't know how it is in India. In the US, we're slowly coming out of the pandemic now. In my county in California, I think we're approaching 70 80% vaccinated. So we are coming out of lockdown and we're doing things. However, throughout 2020, many companies have hired remote workers. So many of my startups in San Francisco have hired workers throughout the US. And those employees are not going to move to San Francisco to work post-COVID. What that means is we'll have to support remote operations and remote work. And that means what? That means distributed edge computing is here to stay, right? So we're talking about 5G networks being deployed everywhere, but intelligent edge computing, where I can log in anywhere and have my enterprise application pushed to me directly from the cloud in a secure manner, in a performing manner. So I don't have to have any performance penalty just because I'm not working in central campus. And that has a lot of security implications, right? So how do you push enterprise content, enterprise application from the cloud all the way to remote village in Colorado, say, or on the beach in Hawaii? That in fact, folks have moved from the mainland of U.S. to Hawaii to taking up residence there during COVID, and they're not coming back. So intelligent, secure edge computing, the support of that is a big trend. Throughout COVID, we know that hacking didn't stop, right? Even though I think the hacking level in March and April took a little dip, but then it came back. The bad guys didn't stop throughout the pandemic. So we saw, and you guys probably saw it too, increased ransomware activity all over the globe, and in US in particular. And that is why the US, the White House actually issued a ransomware memo, right, telling companies how to respond to ransomware. And what they need to do is 6 different practices they have to do. So defending against the ransomware, defending against phishing attempts. Phishing attempts went up about 350% during COVID. And how to protect your employees, including the remote ones, against hacking, against phishing, so that you can still have secure enterprise computing is a big trend. And we all know that during COVID, those companies that are cloud native actually had an easier time because they didn't have to put a VPN gateway. Their employees can access cloud directly anyway. So remote working wasn't a problem. Companies like Google went to 100% remote working without a hitch. But other more traditional companies had trouble. So cloud, again, cloud as a trend, it was accelerated by COVID. So we're seeing increased cloud infrastructure spending, increased cloud application spending. And what that means is some of the cloud security initiatives got accelerated as well. So we have a company in our portfolio called Jupiter One, which is a company that comes in and very quickly understand your cloud environment and give you a visibility map of all the cloud assets. And now that once you have the assets, you can then take data from the assets and understand if your cloud computing is compliant with your policies or with your framework, and fix gaps if they're not compliant. And the whole thing is done in an automated fashion, right? So cloud visibility is a big thing. Cloud infrastructure, automation on cloud infrastructure, and cloud security configuration, CSPM, is a big spending area. So we're seeing a lot of activities in cloud security, cloud configuration, and cloud infrastructure. Now, I want to take a little bit moment talking about a specific tenet of automation that we're seeing. I call that policy as code. It's a very exciting new area for security as well as for automation. Many of you probably know what infrastructure as code is, right? So for example, HashiCorp has this innovation called Terraform, and really allows developers in static time specifies how an operational system, operational infrastructure should be put together. And so you can during static time assess the runtime infrastructure and runtime resources, which is a big push for cloud automation. Same thing as infrastructure as code, we're seeing the trend for policy as code. What is policy as code? Is essentially taking security policy and specifying security policy as program, as an application, so that you can apply all the software engineering principles against security policy. So you can test whether the policy is valid. You can understand the impact of the policy before you deploy it. You can also dynamically change the policy, and you can have a closed loop monitoring on how well a specific policy performs against a certain metric, and whether you should change the policy dynamically so that they can give you better data and better performance. And that is what I call policy as code. And it's very exciting to see that many startups are playing in the policy as code area. And we are giving a lot of attention to policy language. To have policy as code, you have to have a standard language to write and author your policies. And once you have that, then you should have a platform on your infrastructure that can take the policy language and parse what policy is and then implement the policy, right? So this whole thing from authoring to testing to implementation to actuating is a whole closed loop process called policy as code. So that is one of the areas that is very exciting. But in order to have policy as code, we must have uniform visibility. And it goes back to earlier, I said, we have a company called Jupiter Wang that does cloud asset visibility. And I also have another company in my portfolio, which is actually based in India. I'm very excited about this company, which is an open core company. The whole company is based on open source components. And I think one of the founders is also speaking at this conference. And this company is called Project Discovery. And they are in the business of visibility. Now, the reason I'm very excited about visibility is we talked about remote working become a trend, and it is a trend to stay. A company, think about a company used to have maybe 2 or 3 campuses and just only a few remote employees. And now the company may have 60% that's remote work, or even 70, 80% that is outside of the campus. When that happens, guess what happens is the attack surface of the company has just increased several fold, right? You've got a laptop sitting in Starbucks. You've got maybe an iPad in a hotel, and all these devices may carry company data, may do company edge computing, and your attack surface, what's exposed to the internet, what's exposed, which application, which data is exposed to external attack is something you must understand very, very intentionally. So I have a lot of friends who are director of security and leaders of security, and that is one of the top priorities that they are executing today is understanding the exposed visibility area to the internet from the company infrastructure standpoint. So that external visibility, attack surface management is also a very important point. And one of the things that we're seeing is COVID, in terms of culture, flattened the barrier for, or maybe flattened the differences between different organizations and different teams. Why? Because everybody is working remote. Nobody has better access than anybody else. So that brings a very interesting trend. The trend is that going forward, we're expecting more agile, more dynamic collaboration between teams. And in that more agile world, we're seeing a ton of automation needs. We're seeing a ton of sort of I call them micro computing. What is micro computing is you don't need to put together really large monolithic computing tasks. Rather, you are accomplish very small, very agile computing tasks very quickly, one at a time. And then these micro computing tasks together gives you emerging sort of a large application initiatives. And we're seeing that kind of things happening in blockchain. We're seeing it happening in a sort of cloud of edge computing. And I'm a big believer that these microcomputing trends are continuing post-COVID, and we're seeing a ton of demand of supporting automation, supporting remote authentication, where it's not a statically assigned identity. Rather, the identity is dynamically emergent. So I know who you are based on your behavior at this time. It's not based on the user ID or password. So that's what I call dynamic emerging identity. So authorization based on dynamically emerging behavior, dynamically emerging identity, and then we decide what collaboration methods that you're allowed to have, what data you're allowed to be accessing right now, what application you allow to talk to at this moment. That is very interesting to me. And we don't have a lot of security companies yet supplying sort of platform capability for that kind of agile microcomputing. But I'm looking at several companies that will provide functionality as a foundational layer for this type of, I call peer-to-peer microcomputing world to happen. And I think with that, I'm going to quickly conclude my talk about and switching a little bit on to more the investment trends. So I'm in the investment world, and we always look at not only technology trends, but also where the entire market is moving, right? So in the beginning of COVID, threat detection, phishing, and threat response, and those things continue to get a lot of attention and budget. But several things have been put on the back burner a little bit. And one of the things is privacy. Another thing is data security. So even though data security is very important, a lot of companies paused the data security initiatives to support infrastructure work, to support remote work. And now these budgets are coming back. So we're seeing more attention shift to data protection, data security, and privacy initiatives are picking up. So that's a very important thing as well. So we're looking at privacy tech as a rising area for investment post-COVID. We're looking at more so the data protection in the cloud, data identification, data communication, authorization in the cloud is another area. And obviously, sort of a direct data protection like encryption or data masking. And one last area that I want to talk about, which is very immediate today, is supply chain risk management. And many of you probably have heard of the SolarWinds attack, right? This was a very sophisticated operation that compromised the supply chain of a vendor's product that was deployed in many government agencies as well as large enterprise. And a lot of attention now in the security industry has been spent on looking at the blast radius of products. What I mean by blast radius is a product that's, if you're more widely deployed, then you have a bigger blast radius. So the more widely deployed, like Microsoft products or open source products, those are the weakest link, where it's easier for an attacker to come and compromise so that they can get a lot of deployment points. So those supply chain management is a hot topic today in many organizations and in government agencies. So the approach we're looking at is essentially identifying the places where the attackers will come in and get the biggest bang for the buck, and trying to either take that point, the biggest blast radius point, either distribute it so that it's not a single point of failure, it's not replicated everywhere, either distribute it, give it diversity, or you take the crown jewel of your data and really protect it in a way that is beyond what traditional method is. For example, you maybe encrypt it with one key, and and you back up with another key, or you maybe take the data and you splice the data into X different shares and store them on X different servers, so that the attacker can't come in and take this X number of shares that easily. The supply chain management, the crown jewel data management has become a hot topic in the US security industry, and hence a hot area for investment. So I think those are most of the things that we're looking at today. But one thing is clear, that COVID is potentially ending, but security never sleeps, right? So during pandemic, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, we're always there working. We're always looking at the latest threats, the latest adversaries, and this is why I'm in this industry, because it's never a dull moment. There's always new threats and new malware and new ransomware, and we're looking at a more dynamic, more automated world where even the adversaries are smarter than before. So we have to be on our A game and come in and every day and deliver the best security protection for customers, for partners, and for our enterprise. So with that, I will conclude my talk, and hopefully it's something interesting for you to think about as you go about your daily activity. All right, so do we have time for questions or? Hello? So I have a few more minutes. I guess this isn't a place that we can ask questions. Oh, I see some applause. That's good.
So thank you for that wonderful address and those really rich insights on how the ecosystem is progressing. There are a few questions, if you can see in the Q&A tab right there. So if you want to pick up some of them.
Where's the QA tab?
Right on your right-hand side.
Okay, QA tab. Okay. Let's see.
So one of them is, how do you invest in Kubernetes based cybersecurity company in India.
How do I invest what? I can't read this.
Kubernetes.
I only see 2 questions here. Can you read it again?
Okay, there's another question that could finishing increase hardware security?
Could what increase hardware security?
Finishing, like it's asked by Sai Rangesh. Sai, if you could please elaborate a bit.
I'm not seeing the text here. That's why it's hard
that's
for
fine.
me.
That's fine. Phishing. Okay.
Oh, phishing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why phishing would increase hardware security.
Yeah.
I mean, phishing is an age-old problem, right? And so what the traditional method of protecting against phishing, like phishing simulation or user training, is not working too well. So why is it not working too well? Because I don't think we really understand user behavior, right? So a company, I'll give you an example. There's a company that I worked with. They've always had really great scores of phishing simulation, but suddenly another company came in to do a phishing test, and they blast the email, said there's a puppy loose in the parking lot and might be run over by a car, and everybody clicked on the link. Everybody clicked on image because everybody's care about the puppy, right? So I don't think we really understand human psyche. What we need to do is we need to say, okay, you are an admin, you're protecting the crown jewel data. You have to go through a very extensive phishing training. But if you are a receptionist, you don't have access to critical data, we don't need you to go through all that very extensive training. And we need to understand the responsibility roles, and then we do training against that. And I think we are not doing a great job at that today.
Makes sense. So there's another question. Do you think security will become autonomous with AI and ML becoming prime time?
Oh, okay. I don't think yet. I don't think we are there yet. So artificial intelligence and ML, I think, can do a lot for security. However, the state of our security technologies have not yet leveraged the state of our artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I can tell you also, with adversary in the picture, the AI and the ML techniques are available to adversaries as well as they're available to the protection side, right? So it is an arms race, and it'll be very interesting to see how the application of ML and AI can change the dynamics of the arms race between the adversary and the defenders. Who's going to come out ahead? We don't yet know. Right, so think about sort of the GPT-3 research, and think about the gang network. All those techniques that generating good machine learning can be used to generate attacks on the machine learning algorithm. So you're essentially looking at the better the algorithm, the better the attack. And so it is really an arms race, but it's a very interesting one.
Okay, so yeah, that does make sense. So I think that's pretty much about it. And thank you so much for joining us, especially that late in the evening. And it was really great to have you and hear from you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great conference.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, everyone, please stay tuned. We have a very interesting discussion lined up ahead upon global views on working with security startup. So please just stay tuned in the auditorium. Thank you.